Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Super Tees video, and PvP Season 1 of The War Within is about to begin, and if you want to absolutely smash the competition, then I have got a list of my top 10 arena compositions to do so. They have restructured the rewards for PvP this season. A lot of them are a lot more accessible, and if you're looking to go after those rewards in the 3 versus 3 arena bracket, these compositions are going to be really good for getting you there. I'm going to break them down also based on their difficulty to play. So if you're more of like a newcomer versus an advanced player, some of these compositions are going to be more tailored towards your level of experience. So let's get started here. Coming in the number 10 position is a composition that just can't ever get scraped off a 10 list for some reason in any expansion, and I just couldn't not include it on this one. It is the Retribution Paladin Warrior Healer. Now, Retribution as an individual spec, not feeling super spectacular, but it is a great support and has always been one of the best supports for Fury Warrior, which is one of the strongest melee in the game. You couple this with something like a Preservation Evoker or a Discipline Priest, and you've got a death ball of damage that is absolutely going to steamroll people on the ladder. I think if you're a newcomer to the game in 3v3 and you're playing one of these specializations, that this is probably the best composition you can play. But as you get more and more advanced towards the higher rankings of the ladder and the top end, I think it does start to fall off at that side. So if you're looking to play it like 1,000 rating to maybe 2,200, this is probably one of the best compositions still to play, which is why it's coming in at the number 10 position. Another Cleave composition, which may come as a surprise if you're not paying attention to any of the high-level competitive play, but with my analysis so far, the specializations on an individual basis and the track record of this composition and tournament play throughout Dragonflight, the Rogue Death Knight is a composition that I think that you absolutely cannot underrate. Death Knights are really powerful. I think Unholy Death Knight might be like the best newcomer specialization. That 1,000 rating to 2,400, maybe even beyond that, especially with the 5% damage buff they're getting right off the rip here on Tuesday. I think Unholy DK is going to be a ladder destroyer. Pair that up with an Assassination Rogues, which just do insane amounts of damage right now, and the Death Knight can group enemies together for the Rogue to AoE. You bring in a Preservation Evoker or Discipline Priest, again, to bring in damage. We're going to be hearing that a lot on this list. It isn't to say that you couldn't play it with some other healer. If you're playing a Resto Druid and you're wondering, like, why is it not shown here? You can substitute in any healer for this. This is just like ideal situation based on what I've seen so far. I think Shaman can do well in this composition as well. Static Field Totem, pulling enemies together, decent throughput. Not as much damage, unfortunately, as Prez or Disc, though, which is why I think it falls down a bit. But this is going to be a huge kind of cluster composition that's just going to bleed people, AoE them down, and do monstrous amounts of damage. Again, I think it's still a really good new player friendly composition, although it might be a little bit less forgiving than the Ret Warrior. The Ret Warrior has a little bit more tankiness to it, but this is going to have a lot more lethality. Coming in at the number 8 position is another Death Knight composition, the Windwalker Death Knight. I promise these are not all Death Knight compositions, but these tend to be like the best kind of like ladder compositions of these double melee DPS Cleave compositions, and these are the ones that are really shining the most to me. With this one is one where you can bring in a Frost Death Knight. You could bring in Frost with the Assassination Rogue as well, but I think the sustain with that might be a bit better. But here with burst damage being the name of the game, I think that Frost is like a really viable substitute. Same type of deal, Preservation Evoker. I put a Resto Druid here to make you guys not feel bad about not showing up at all so far on the list, but Discipline Priest obviously wouldn't be a bad substitute on this composition either, or even potentially a Holy Priest, given that they have instant ranged CC. But Windwalker, super sleeper spec, does monstrous amounts of damage, really tanky, has Clash now to pull enemies closer, has knockups to interrupt casters. There's way more disruption on this composition than in the past, which is going to allow it more power as you get higher in ratings than the other two options. And it's probably around the same level of difficulty, which is why it's coming in a little bit higher on the list. Coming in at number 7 is going to be the Devastation Evoker DK. I know I just said there's going to be no more DKs. I promise this is the last one, at least I think so. This one is going to be a monster. Devastation Evokers absolutely mow down everything they see right now in ladder play. It's just absolutely disgusting the amount of damage that they do. I have put Frost Death Knight at the front of this because this has been the staple specialization for this comp. You grip everything together, send a massive go with a deep breath, and something like a Holy Priest bringing extra instant CC actually has historically been kind of the healer healer for this composition at our tournament level, even though Holy isn't necessarily as good as Disc or Prez. Now, you could bring in a Prez or a Disc. It doesn't say that, again, that you can't substitute in healers. This is where I just think the ideal healer is Holy Priest because of the instant CC and on-demand burst in those moments. You can play with Unholy. It has a track record of it, but I think Frost is actually going to be the best with this one. Just absolutely hit and run. Just pull everything together, blast it down. Don't get a kill, retreat, run away until you can do it again. This comp's going to do overwhelming amounts of damage, but it does lack some control, which is why it's coming a little bit lower on the list. But these are comps that are great to play at like the newcomer level. Moving in at number 6 is going to be Jungle Cleave. This is one I think is super slept on. Hunters do insane damage right now. Feral Druids are really tanky, unlike before. I think a Preservation Evoker or Disc Priest backing that much damage with you is going to be great. Can bring in a Holy Priest for the extra instant CC with Chastise as well. And I saw Survival Hunter could be like a decent little substitute flip here, but I really think it's going to be Marksmanship, which is kind of taking the name of the game here for Hunters because they're just doing so much damage at the moment. It requires a little bit more strategy, though. This one's going to be a bit harder to play. I think that this one starts to shine more at like the mid and advanced levels for players, generally speaking. So if you're a beginner, might not be one of the best. If you're like looking for a beginner friendly Hunter comp, it might be something more like Hunter Death Knight. But this one definitely is good, looking like a really strong contender at the beginning of the War Within. Coming in at number 5 is Rogue Priest Shaman, which is the standard for it, but I think it's going to be a Prez Evoker in a lot of cases. So the Shadow Priest Rogue. I think Assassination works really well for this. You need the extra sustain, the extra pressure while your Shadow Priest is getting trained. That's something that a Subtlety Rogue or an Outlaw Rogue is likely not going to be able to contend with. Not that you couldn't make it work, but they're just going to be way harder to execute and have success on the ladder. Shadow Priests are really durable right now, so this is going to be kind of like a setup attrition composition that focuses on outlasting their opponents and just doing a monstrous amount of damage. Again, this is getting more like high, moderate, advanced level of difficulty in terms of compositions, but its potential is also way higher because of the control that it's going to have at that level of play. I think that it could struggle at lower ratings with Fury Warriors and Windwalkers, which, I mean, look at what we just listed, right? So this might not be the composition for you if you're aiming for like that elite set or the new 1950 illusion reward, but if you're looking for something a little bit beyond that, a little bit more difficult, but has way bigger payoff, I think this is going to be one of the best ones. Coming in at number 4 is the Mage Warlock, which this is not Mage Warlock icons. I don't know this. Ignore this. I don't know what this graphic is. Obviously, I did not update this because Demo should not be on this list. Frost Mage is great. Resto Druid, you can play that with this. Holy Priest, obviously Prez Evoker and Disc Priest will be good as well. But Affliction Warlock and Frost Mage, and then Prez Evoker or Resto Druid or Resto Shaman. Really, any healer with Mage Warlock is a really good go-to. If you've got like caster friends, you want to play a caster comp, Frost Mage and Afflock, which obviously aren't shown here on the screen. I'm sure the comments are going to let me know about that. Is like the go-to. This is going to be like the easiest double caster comp that you can play in the game. Obviously, it's like all S-tier specializations. You're going to be just plowing through enemies with a lot of ease with this one, I think. It's a really good composition. Coming in at number 3 is going to be Mage Feral J, which may have been one that you weren't expecting, but I have seen this pop up more and more and more and more. It was really good even towards the end of Dragonflight. Players are starting to pick up on it, but now that Feral J is so powerful defensively and Frost Mage is so strong offensively, and you can bring in a healer like a Disc Priest or a Preservation Evoker in the current meta, this composition is really getting a big opportunity to shine. It's absolutely crazy. I think this is a comp that can also do well at almost any rating. Maybe it's a bit harder at the lower end as a beginner, but it still can be pretty straightforward where you just move in and rake stun to spam ice and take something out really fast with the amount of damage that you can do. Definitely don't sleep on this composition, Mage Feral J. Coming in at number 2 is going to be Rogue Warlock. Now, Affliction Warlock, Assassination Rogue, and Prez Evoker, I think is going to be probably one of the more standard versions of this composition. But Subtlety Rogue, if you got a good one, can definitely make things a lot easier for you as an Affliction Warlock. So don't sleep on Subtlety. It is one of the best specs in the game. But I think for beginner players, Assassination is going to play a little bit easier for you, but as we get to higher and higher advanced levels, I think Subtlety could possibly take over for it. You could put any healer here. I've just put Prez as the most ideal because of its throughput at the moment, but you could bring in any healer for this. So if your healer really looking for a comp and you haven't seen yourself on the list, this is probably one of the best ones that you could get for the ladder. Coming in at number 1, who is the numero uno composition for the beginning of the War Within? Guess in the comments down below before I click the button. Curious to see what you think. I'm sure you're all going to get it. It's a pretty obvious one. The number 1 composition is Rogue Mage. Now, that's just because, look at the meta, man. These classes are monsters. They do so much damage, so much control, such high survivability between all of them. And if you execute at the highest level, you're going to be absolutely unstoppable. I do think that the things that could keep this composition in check are Death Knight compositions and Hunter compositions, possibly. That's what I'm really keeping my eye on for the first week. But I think that this composition will absolutely make anybody bow down to you. Again, you can bring in Subtlety. I think as you get more advanced, Assassinations will be a lot easier to execute on at lower ratings. Preservation Evoker is still a great substitute for Disc in this composition as well, although historically it has been the Discipline Priest. But it's just a powerhouse. And, you know, this is the one time where it's not like it's like a meme, like RMP is the best. I actually legitimately think like this is feeling like the meta. Now, do note they put out a post that I covered in a video that they're going to be doing a lot of changes over this week. So if you want to stay up to date with those changes related to the game and update to these types of lists that you're staying ahead of the competition related to news to the game, then make sure to smash the subscribe button so you don't miss out. And your support is greatly appreciated on my long-term goal of getting to 100,000 subscribers. I actually think we're pretty close to 60,000 at this point, which is remarkable. So I appreciate you guys coming along this journey with me. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.